The legislative session in Springfield ended at midnight on May 31st. We had some important wins, and of course, we had some frustrations. So, this is a video updating local 1,600 members on this session. Before I get into the details, I just have to remind everybody that all of our legislative and political work is made possible by our COPE fund. COPE is an optional contribution you can make to our political activities. We hope you will. You can reach out to me or to your chapter chair for more details. Additionally, our legislative work is made possible by a whole lot of people working together. Importantly, our allies in the Illinois House and Illinois Senate, our 1,600 political team, which includes our officers, especially Tony Johnston, our legislative committee, also all of our members who make calls and file witness slips and come to Springfield to testify when needed. And, Tony and I try to get to Springfield as often as we can, but we cannot be there every day. It is so helpful that we have the Illinois Federation of Teachers political team in the Capitol on the ground talking to legislators on our behalf all the time, always calling us and keeping us posted on changes. So thank you to IFT's political team. They really do a great job. So let's talk about a few of our victories. First, let me start with a quote-unquote win, but a kind of strange win. There has been a funding increase of 1%. And honestly, 1% is not where we hoped it would be. But compared to the past, especially to the Rauner years and to the Blagojevich years, a 1% increase is still a better budget than many of the budgets we have survived and lived through over the last couple decades. However, a weird thing in this budget is that they're giving us 1% for sure, but there is an additional 2% held back for community colleges that is contingent on the impact of the federal budget. So there's groupings of money in this budget that are being kind of put into a savings account. And if the federal budget is as bad as it looks like it's going to be, that money is going to have to go to other kinds of services like healthcare, for instance. If the federal budget isn't as bad as it looks like it's going to be, then that money could be distributed. So this could be a 3% increase, which is actually closer to where we should be when you look at inflation. But it also could be a 1% increase. So this is a win that we're growing and that there's a commitment from our legislators to keep funding us at a growing pace. But it's not sure where it's going to be. And again, they're really nervous about what is happening in Washington, D.C. So we're going to keep watching and see how this unfolds. Second, this budget includes full pension payments. Now, let me just say, that's the job of the General Assembly to make these payments. So maybe I don't even need to include this, and maybe I shouldn't even acknowledge it. But in the past, this is what has really gotten us in trouble. When we've had hard budgets, the General Assembly has dipped into the pension fund and used that money for other things. And I just want to acknowledge that this year has been a tough budget. They had to make some tough decisions, but they have been committed to keeping pensions healthy and doing their part on a yearly basis. And this maybe should not even be included. Maybe it goes without saying, but I do want to acknowledge it, that this is now the new business of usual, is doing the right thing, the things that we should have been doing for the last 2 decades all along. So thank you to our elected officials for that. The General Assembly also increased MAP grants by $10 million. The monetary award programs is student assistance at the state level based on financial need. And this opens the door to so many students that wouldn't otherwise be able to afford higher education. This is a huge enrollment support for our colleges, and it really helps us and helps so many of our students. Next, the General Assembly did pass some dual credit reforms that are generally good for community colleges. As our faculty generally know, dual credit keeps expanding. It keeps eroding our enrollments and undercutting our budgets. Well, this new dual credit update gives some limiters, not major limiters, but at least some good steps. So first off, all high schools that want to expand their dual credit offerings are required to come to their local community college first, and the community college can say yes or no. So before they go to a university or an out-of-state provider, they have to come to us, and we have some ability to slow that process down. There are some significant limits on out-of-state colleges and universities where those agreements that they make from different institutions around the country have to be made public. They cannot be secret. We maintained the high school teacher credentials so that high school teachers that teach our classes have to have the same credentials that our employees have to have. And we fought to get some faculty representation on the statewide dual credit committee. So this doesn't solve all of our issues, but it is sort of a refreshing step in the right direction for us after the continual expansion of dual credit. We had a major victory in advancing legislation that requires public colleges and universities to provide on-site licensed clinical professionals to deal with student mental health. We are sick of our colleges removing positions and outsourcing humans on campus with 1-800 numbers and apps. So this mandates that there are people on campus to support our students, to work with our faculty and staff. This was a big win, and I want to give a special shout out to Shania Gray from Moraine Valley, who's one of our counselors, who testified in the House Higher Ed Committee and the Senate Higher Ed Committee. I'm proud of the work we did on this bill. We also initiated and passed some of the first legislation that regulates artificial intelligence within Illinois higher education. The bill that we passed ensures that only humans can give college credit in Illinois community colleges. So our faculty positions cannot be outsourced to AI agents. This is a very first step. There's a lot to be done in regulating artificial intelligence, but this is an important step leading the nation, making changes to protect our positions. We were also part of a consortium of higher education unions from IFT and IEA that passed legislation requiring the state of Illinois to establish a task force to look at libraries and librarians. As everyone probably knows, there's increasing pressure on our colleges to cut services as budgets become tighter and tighter. And unfortunately, libraries have really taken a hit over the last couple decades. It's time to get some good information that we can use to push for additional legislation, retaining these positions and the important services that they provide. These are some significant victories that will make a difference for our members, our students, and our colleges. But of course, not everything was a victory. So let's talk about some of the legislation that did not pass. So yes, it did not pass, but it does not mean that it's dead. So I'm just going to call this legislation that is on hold for the future. Many of you watching this video are probably wondering what happened with pensions. So yes, unfortunately, Tier 2 pensions did not pass. We were part of a coalition through IFT that included public sector workers from all across Illinois. So not just higher education, not just educators, but state workers, municipal workers, firefighters, you name it. We made hundreds of thousands of calls. We had major rallies in Springfield. And, really, this is the closest we've ever been to passing these reforms. And it does feel like we're on the verge of getting this done in the near future, maybe in the veto session in the fall, maybe next year. The budget does earmark $75 million toward this effort, but it has not been actually applied. So it's kind of like on hold, being held back. And there is the possibility that as we see what happens in Washington with the federal budget and how that impacts the Illinois budget, that further action may be taken on this. So it's super disappointing. It's super frustrating because we've really been trying in a good faith effort to make compromises and to address the concerns that the governor had and the leaders in the House and the Senate. And I think our coalition has done a great job addressing this. But the leadership in government has just been nervous to take this step until they have a fuller picture of what's happening across the country. We are not done. We are going to keep fighting. We are going to make a difference on this. It's just not happening in May of 2025. Obviously, we will keep you posted. We will be calling for action. We are not done yet. Our bill in the Senate that establishes an elected board of trustees for the city colleges of Chicago also stalled out this session. Super frustrating, but we did have some good work. We were able to get 41 co-sponsors out of 59 senators. That's 70% of the Senate. That's really strong support. We are building support in the Chicago City Council. 17 alders signed a letter to Senate President Don Harmon asking that this legislation move forward. We also had some great publicity in local media, so we're hoping to see some momentum on this. We're going to be working this summer to talk to legislators. This has the most energy around this bill that we've seen in quite a while, even though it didn't really get going in the Senate. So the work continues. We are going to need members to reach out to their elected officials. It is one of those things where there is still hope within this, but also, again, frustration that this did not move forward, even though it has significant support. Another initiative that was very close, that had some good compromises, but ultimately didn't get passed is the community college baccalaureate degree. This is something that we've supported for a number of years, but actually had some newfound energy because Governor Pritzker decided to make this one of his priorities and push it forward, which I got to say makes a difference to have the governor on your side. We had huge debates and battles with the university systems. They mandated all kinds of red tape to get these workforce-focused bachelor's degrees through. We made those compromises that looked like things were going well, and ultimately the brakes were put on this legislation through the Black Caucus. The Black Caucus was significantly worried about Chicago State, Governor State, and Northeastern University, that their enrollments would get unduly hurt by this without having additional funding. So there's another initiative that was separate, looking to fund universities in a different way, focused on equity. Well, the governor has really not supported that to the degree they wanted to, and that legislation didn't move forward. So the Black Caucus said, well, if you're not moving this legislation forward, we're not going to support the community college baccalaureate degree, and put the brakes on all of it. I have to say, I appreciate this move to try to fund universities. They definitely need this, but it's also unfortunate for us that this legislation is now getting entangled with a larger fight over money. We'll see where this goes next time. I do not think the governor has given up on this. We surely have not either. We will keep fighting and keep pushing. This next legislation related to the college insurance program actually had a couple of wins and some good things happening, but it didn't quite get to where we wanted it to be. The college insurance program excludes folks in the city colleges. Sorry about that, but there's a separate system. So this is for suburban and downstate community college employees who retire early. It's insurance that they use until they reach the age for Medicare. This has been historically underfunded, where payments are greatly delayed, sometimes for a year and a half, really causing credit problems for people that use it. The good part of this is that there is still basic funding included in the budget for the college insurance program. So it's still going, it's still funded. There were hearings held, so this is also a win, looking at why it's underfunded and what the needs are. But we needed more funding to boost this back up so that this program can catch up and be a little more prompt in making payments. So we still need to keep working on this. We had it moved in the right direction, but it didn't quite get to where we wanted it to be. This is something that we will absolutely keep working on. There is no doubt that this spring was one of the most difficult budget cycles that Illinois has faced, and it's probably going to get harder before it gets easier. A couple things that are at the heart of this is that we have, as a state, a revenue problem. Our income tax, our flat tax, is outdated. Additionally, we do not tax services, so we are still, in a taxing as if we're in an old economy that produces things as opposed to an economy that produces services. Additionally, Washington is a mess, and Washington is going after us. They are cutting and slashing programs that are really important to us, and will be cutting things that impact the state budget, no doubt. They are not a friend of ours right now, and that is a major disturbance that we are watching. There are some good things, though, so not just to end on a negative note. The budget increase to community colleges and the pension payment, along with some of the other pieces of legislation, are really important to us. The governor and General Assembly really do acknowledge the value of higher education, and I think specifically they acknowledge the value that community colleges provide, and they have acted on that, so that is good. We continue to work. I want to call on you to be part of this. If you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you for sticking with this video to the end, and feel free to drop me a line.